So today's educational is on the file that's called 6 Steps to a Structured Organizing Conversation. So I hope that this will be informational to you. So the table of contents, so that's the why, and we need to also identify to whom we hold these conversations, and then it's the 6 steps. And there is also a parallel kind of process, which is, I call it the emotional roadmap. And then it comes to kind of, self-rehearsing, developing a rap sheet, and then rules of thumb. And I guess there's a time for discussion as well. So why do we do organizing conversations? Apparently, that is a way to actively develop new individuals into our organizations. I believe that while you're out there doing union works or other progressive works, you have a lot of chances to talk to people. And even if, and most importantly, if you don't, then to try to start, then interpersonal networking is especially important, especially when you are relatively small, or even if you don't even have that organization in the first place. You will need this conversation to get people to band together and kind of have this organization. Also, while you're doing your progressive works on your struggles, to have this conversation would immediately gain momentum for your struggles, because a lot of this is action oriented, and our goal is to get that person to do some actions, whether that is joining the organization or after they join the organization, you have to get them to do some work assignments. And finally, it is inspiring potential individuals into becoming conscious members of the masses. So a lot of the questions that we ask would prompting self-education through careful listening and gentle nudges towards realizing the oppression, realizing the kind of class dynamics. So the root is still in their material conditions, but we will be providing some gentle nudges for them to kind of push them in certain ways, so that they will understand their material conditions. So these are the kind of why and our objectives when we're starting these organizing conversations. So to whom we hold these conversations? So of course, there are going to be hard nuts to crack, and there are going to be people that are nigh impossible to reach, especially in kind of hostile environments. So how do we identify potential individuals? Of course, first is observation. One is that we need to observe their material conditions. Are they facing difficulties in their lives? I believe a lot of people are facing difficulties in their lives. And would being engaged in your struggles help them in any way, both materially and emotionally? So for example, I started doing unionizing works and joining the party because kind of during the early stages of the COVID fiasco, I was very materially I was kind of okay, but I was mostly emotionally very drawn out. So being engaged kind of helped me in that way. Also, you might be able to gauge their political opinions on how supportive or tolerating are they likely to be to your progressive cause. That observation can be done in many places, casual conversations, social media, that kind of things. Also, if you happens to be in a event, in the events, the people that are going to be drawn to that event are potentially easier to access, of course, right? So that is also a very good place for you to network and getting in contact with potentially approachable individuals. And then since after you have identified their kind of level of support, level of engagement, you can form expectation accordingly and design kind of roadmaps or exact tactics for each individual. So every different person is probably going to have a slightly different approach to it. So this is something that I kind of get from my engagement in our unions, and also from the book Secrets Trainer's Guide, is that you can do a social mapping of all of the people or all of the people that your comrades, your fellow people in the organization knows is that there are potentially 5 levels of people. So of course there's the core, there are the the guiding committee members and whatnot, and then there are the activists. They are kind of just, I guess, less devoted or central than core, but core and activist is generally your organization, right? And then outside of that, there are supporters. They're potentially not part of these organizations, but they're supportive. They might not necessarily be super engaged, but they will sign your letters, they will do your surveys, that kind of thing. And then there's the disengaged. They are people that are, meh. I don't really care about this activism stuff. And then, so these 4 levels are the people that you're, kind of going to approach. Our goal is to try to get the supporters to become activists, get disengaged to become supporters. Then there are hostile people. I guess those are the people that initially you will probably want to either avoid or approach very, very carefully so that not to, I guess, get yourself nipped in the bud or something. Yeah, so that will be a very important kind of step in your planning stage. So you have identified your individual. You have kind of formed your expectation. So how do we actually approach this organization? So the 6 steps are: first, introduction, who you are, why you came here, then issues and agitation, then vision and education, then call to question, inoculation, then work assignment. So this is why I say that it is focused on education, which is in the first 2 parts. And it is also action-oriented, which is kind of focused on the last 3 parts. What are these? So I will walk you step by step. So introduction, of course, introduce yourself, be confident, and set a context for the conversation that relates to this specific situation of this group of workers. So ideally, you would have made them kind of know that you're going to have this conversation with them so that you can have, I guess, a chunk of uninterrupted time. If not, then I guess that's also okay. And why you're here. So the key is to show concern and care for this worker. You're not talking to use them. You're talking to actually make their life situation better. And then what are we trying to do? Keep in mind that we're doing it based on what they need. So please show your willingness to listen. And that is kind of the thing that I get from the AFT's training on this exact conversation, is that you will have to listen more, only talk and ask questions when it is necessary. So an example could be here, like, some of your coworkers are ready to make improvement at work. We're talking to all, your fellow workers about how you can build the strengths you need, blah, blah, blah. So some of these examples you can see from the reading materials. Anyway, so after you get into the door, so figure out what issues are important to the workers through open-ended questions about work and what they do. So these are some of the prompts that you can potentially use. So these should be open-ended because you wanted the workers to bring their concerns to you. It is to both educate yourself about their actual working conditions and also, get them engaged to get them to find this struggle more related to them. So after gauging at these issues, agitate the workers through prodding about the details of these issues, validate their experience, and have them acknowledge that it is indeed not fair, because as we can all see, many of us are working in this not fair condition. We just might not really think about it so much. It's kind of like, I know if any of you have been to psychodynamic therapy, it's basically kind of, it believes that the roots is in yourself. So the therapist would kind of just ask prodding questions to kind of help you dig out your unconscious feelings. In this case, you will do that same thing to help the workers dig out their unconscious feeling about not being fairly treated. Then, vision and education. So, see, a lot of workers are often used to being undervalued, so we need to work through that mental blocks. We will need to raise their expectation of what kind of gains they deserve, and also validate the value of their labor. That is very important in making the workers conscious. And then after that, communicate the necessary points of education. So, for example, needs of organization and solidarity. So, thought experiment. Imagine asking for these changes alone to your management. Will they give you any shit? Then imagine thousands of you demanding these changes together. Then you are a force to be reckoned with. And also communicate what a union is, all the technicalities, what does the union's plan look like, and also provide emotional and technical assurance, of course. So this is the vision and education part. And the question is basically just, well, are you willing to sign up? So you can ask them to join, ask for their contact information for follow-up, that kind of thing. And after that, you will have to do this is called inoculation. And just like, vaccine inoculation, give them a little bit of the poison of what they will potentially hear from the management. This is also a very important part of education, is that from the management's point of view, they will discourage you. They will buy you out and other stuff. So you need to, have them ready for this kind of shit. Be clear about what the union asks from the workers, dues and stuff. If you're clear, then all of the threats from the management will just be nada. And also be clear that the union is you and your coworkers, not some other third party. The management would say that the union is a third party, that is against the law or something. So you need to be clear that this is you and your coworkers and people just like you, and also know their legal rights. The kind of union law is different in different places, different field of work, that kind of stuff. The workers need to also know that the management's mindset and expect or counteract accordingly. This will also increase assurance and decrease panic, mistrust, and confusion, so that is good. This will be a good entry point to, I guess, introduce the workers to class analysis. Would the management just want to provide more for you out of their goodness, mercy, or whatever? Who's going to look out for you? You and your coworkers, or the management, or the property owners and whatnot. So that is the fourth and fifth step. Then the final step, you need to actually get them to do some works. Well, now you're a union member or a member of the organization. So what you do? Assignments can start small, such as surveys, letter writing, signatures, things that will facilitate the current struggle your organization is in. And maybe after they're like super on board or they're like super excited to do this, you can ask them to talk to more coworkers so that they can join too. If they're really on board, you can do this exact training with them so that they can recruit their coworkers. Role play is I guess role play takes a little bit too much time, so we're not going to do that today, but you can probably role play the conversation with the worker so that this training can, just get passed on. And most importantly, set a specific date, time, and place for follow-up. This will be crucial for long-term engagement. So that rounds up the 6 steps. This emotional roadmap thing kind of parallels with the 6 steps, but you can kind of see elements of it in the different steps, as I mentioned before. Short for AHUI, which is anger, hope, urgency, and you. So I will elaborate about that slightly later. So first, anger. Do you hear the people singing the song of Angry Man? Angry Man can do a lot of actions. So you will need to lead the conversation towards the injustice in their lives, because righteous anger towards injustice is a very powerful fuel, but they might not know where to use that fuel. They might not be aware of their built up anger. So we need to kind of nudge the conversation towards it. So these are some example questions. And the most important thing is to let their own thought process unravel that anger. So while they're talking about it, you can identify sources of anger that might present as an anger towards a mistreatment of self, but they might not initially feel anger. They might express that as frustration or self-loathing. Or they can be angry because people in their life are being mistreated. That can be expressed as sympathy and worry, that kind of thing. But most importantly is that you should prod them just enough. Don't overdo it to the point of hurting people. We do not want to traumatize people or making them so depressed and hopeless to the point of inaction. So that is anger. So anger can go both ways. It can either go hopeless depression or hopeful actions. So you will also need to inspire hope by conveying a clear, credible, worthwhile plan and share why you feel hopeful. This is in parallel with the vision and education part of your 6 steps. So how to frame hope. So hope can come from knowing what are the concrete steps we, the organization, and the people can take together. It can also, so this is more for if you already have an organization, is that what have our struggle already won? So this is an example of my organization. So through our campaign, we've raised awareness of the unjust quarantine costs and pressured the school to cover it through their COVID fund. It is possible to change, even if we're not an actual union. We have already achieved this. So think about it, how much we can achieve if more people join us. And also, if you're not necessarily a huge organization or not have won a lot, you can frame hope by giving them a vision of what have similar struggles like ours won. For example, the students and faculty in Michigan have built a much larger campaign on this. They have even did a general strike for some weeks. So that could also be a source of hope. And also, what does your organization and struggle look like? This, size, atmosphere, solidarity. I see a lot of that in, people talking towards potential CPUSA members, is that, we have, that many people, our atmosphere is like what, and, international solidarity and whatnot. That's the things that, provides people with hope and assurance. But most importantly, you need to let them know that winning is possible. Then urgency, right? So I'm feeling hopeful, but why should I be engaged? So in order to inspire immediate action, the workers would need to know that they have to act not now, not later. So the way of invoking urgency, for example, immediate danger or loss, that people are in danger, so we have to act now. For example, now a lot of people are facing eviction this winter, and unemployment, hunger, that kind of thing. And also you might also invoke urgency by saying that a chance to make changes is upon us, and it will be a pity if it slips away. For example, it's kind of in the winter break time, so it might be a chance for us to actually pressure some changes to the school administration. If we don't act now, then the next semester is going to start and we'll have all of this shit all over again. Letting people know that other people need them, that is a very powerful source of urgency, that they will, oh my God, I'm needed. I'll have to do this. And finally, you emphasize the value of their participation, the value. Workers are so used to being undervalued. So this is where you ask the worker to participate in actions. And we must emphasize how their participation is crucial, it's valuable, it's meaningful, so that they will, get emotionally attached and engage into this struggle. So we can start relatively small, do a survey, come to a gathering, go to a webinar, see how they feel about it through follow-ups. So you can have, several ways to segue into your actions. For example, if they express hope or urgency, if they respond very well to the previous 3 steps, you can probably just kind of segue into asking them for, would you like to be a part of it? Would you be interested in that? Do you want, to do something? Yeah. Also, you can consider their interest, preferably in a very, personal way, to think that, you are considering about their well-beings, and you ask them to do this specifically because you consider their well-beings. For example, I asked this dude, that's my kind of coworker, to do this interview with us. So I'll just be like, hey, dude, I know you've been through a lot of shit in your workplace. Would you be interested in this interview that we're doing? Your experience is very representative, and I figure you could use a place to vent or something, because that buddy he is kind of like in the supporter kind of range, and he knows that I'm doing a lot of things with unionization and improving student worker environment. So then he's on board. So these are some of, I guess, the examples that I used during my unionization works. So for each different target, for each different line of work, it might be different. So before you get this conversation going, you can probably develop a rap sheet of how these are kind of going and where you are planning to evoke the certain emotion along this roadmap. So that is something that you can do. So there are two, I guess, worksheets that one is the Ahui one, and the other is the 6-step reading materials. You can kind of follow that to kind of develop your rap sheet to push the conversation forward. Finally, some general rule of thumb. So most importantly, more listening and not less talking, but efficient talking. So most importantly, we need to listen to the workers' issues, talk only to facilitate and agitate or educate. Ask questions that would reveal their issues, that would, push their thought process forward, and encourage them to ask questions too. If they ask questions, that shows their interest and shows their, deep concerns, and also show care, sympathy, and assurance, and validate their experiences too. Their experience is valid. They have, gone through enough invalidation over the course of their work, so that we will need to validate. Don't talk down to them. And most importantly, remember to follow up. This is crucial for long-term engagement and general solidarities, and just the general cohesiveness of your potential organization or the organizations that you already have. So you might ask a question after that. So, well, that's a very pleasant conversation. Is it okay for me to get back to you in a certain amount of time? Or, after they participated in some actions, you can probably ask, hey, do you remember that, whatever that we did? We've got some progress on that. Would you like to know about it? Is it okay that I, set up a time to talk with you about it? That kind of thing. Well, hopefully that's been a informational presentation. So I guess now it's time for discussion. So these are the references that I used, and also I draw some of real life experience and stuff. So yeah, I would like to hear from you about what kind of experience or some obstacles that you had during your organization conversations. And I guess that's it.